Cause I'm a wheelburner, I was burning down the road. Yes, I'm a wheelburner, this life never gets old. Cause I'm a wheelburner, come on wheelburners, take a ride on the Wheelburner Express.
Hey, Wheelburners, how we doing today? It's a nice Saturday afternoon here. We're gonna throw this out real quick. It was just something I thought I'd throw together. I saw a video that Nevada put out, and they're talking about governing the trucks in the U.S. and the implications and what's going to happen. And we've been governed in Canada since 2009. It was tabled in 2008, but didn't come into effect until January, I think, of 2009. And we are governed in Canada at 105 kilometers an hour, or say 62 and a half miles an hour. And it sucks. But the U.S., the Federal Motor Carrier, I wrote it down, Safety Administration, what a handle. They've tabled it. They tabled it on April 29th, and the FSMCA is saying that they want to govern the U.S. trucks at 60 to 65 miles an hour on an interstate system where I think the average speed now is 70. They still got 65s and a couple of 60s, but I think most speed limits in the States now are 70 miles an hour. So they want to govern the trucks at 65 miles an hour, and the ATA, the American Trucking Association, came back that they might support 70. So what is this going to mean for them? It's not going to be good, because you got to remember, there's speed limits. There's places in the States where the speed limits are 75, 80, 85 miles an hour. If you take an interstate where the speed limit is 85 miles an hour and you're in a castrated truck doing 65, you are nothing but a hindrance. Now, the reason, black flies. In Ontario, the reasoning behind this, that they did this back in 2009, is they were saying, and this was without any research, they did this first and then obviously waited a year, and it was only a year. In 2009, January, they put it in, and then a year later in 2010, they'd accumulated some data to which very few people have seen. And what they were saying is that if they could keep all of the trucks in the right lane, all doing 62 or 105 kilometers an hour, it would stop or slow down the high impact collision and bring that rate down. And it would decrease deaths. And that was the main thing. They were saying that of the accidents that were happening on the Canadian highways involving trucks and cars, they were saying it was due that the trucks were moving at a higher speed, and it was more dangerous, and more people were getting killed, and more accidents were being caused, and that's when they brought that in. And they did, and then in 2010 they put out a study of some of the results, and the results did not back up what they thought was going to happen. They said, oh, well, 70% of deaths and accidents involving trucks at high speeds have been decreased. Well, of course they've been decreased because all the trucks had been slowed down. Now, when I say that they put speed limiters on the trucks, they didn't actually take a device. Like back in the day, there was an actual device that they put on the truck. Nowadays, it's all done by your computer. They plug your truck in on the computer, they tap, and they set the RPMs at whatever it is for whatever speed that is, and the truck will no longer go above that speed. And it didn't work out, and it still hasn't worked out. If you are an American or if you're a Canadian and you're on a Canadian highway where our speed limits are 100 kilometers an hour. Now, they've recently, in some of our 400 series highways, and all of our western provinces, are the highways out there are at 110, which is 68 miles an hour. We can't even run that fast because our trucks are supposed to be governed at 105, which is 62. Now, by doing that, they were saying that, like I said, 70% of all the people and all of the accidents, it brought the deaths and everything. Well, of course it did. If your trucks are only running at 62 miles an hour, then all of the death rates of high-speed accidents involving trucks is going to be less as well. So the data was inconclusive, and over the years, it is just kind of, nobody's really addressed it. Nobody's really assessed it. The truckers here haven't addressed it. The OTA really hasn't addressed it. The OTA is the Ontario Trucking Association, hasn't really addressed it. MTO, it's my personal opinion. For example, a lot of us don't run with our trucks governed, and if you get pulled in, nowadays they stopped asking. The MTO in Ontario, Ministry of Transportation of Ontario, they've stopped asking because in general, and I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying a lot of the guys that are out there enforcing this have seen the results and they don't agree with it, so they've stopped enforcing it. It's very rare now in Ontario that you're going to get in shit for a truck not being governed. The only time like you will hear about that now is if somebody gets totally carried away and they're doing 75 miles an hour and they cause a wreck. Well, yeah, then charges are going to be laid and there's going to be some problems and issues. That guy's going to be having some problems. But if you've got a truck and the speed limit up here is 62, 65, our highways up here, even though the speed limit's 100 or 110, the average traffic moves at about 120, which is almost 75 miles an hour. And that's the average speed. So trucks are lumbersome and clunky and slow, and they cause problems if traffic is moving at 75 miles an hour. And the US guys are going to have this even worse. You got to remember, their speed limits are 75, 80, 85. I can't imagine what would happen if they castrate their trucks, even at say 70. At 70 miles an hour, if you get onto an 85 mile an hour road, I can't imagine the headache and havoc that's going to cause down there. You got to remember, they got 10 times the population of Canada. That means they've got 10 times as many truck drivers on the road down there. So their motorways are 10 times busier than ours. I can't even imagine the havoc that's going to happen. How many times you're going to see, and you see this in Canada all the time, especially on the 401 up and down the highway. One guy's governed at 65, one guy's governed at 64 and a half. And the guy that's at 65, well, he's not going to have any of that. He'll go out and pass the guy at 64 and a half. And it'll take 15 minutes for the guy to get around him. And then if they hit a hill, oh God, for God's sakes. You look in the mirror and there's a lineup of cars. There's like 50 cars behind them. And that's when accidents are starting to happen, okay? These guys will do this. There'll be 45, 50 cars lined up. And as soon as that truck finally clears the slower moving truck and pulls back in, what's happening? You got 50 four-wheelers all pissed off, all been bitching for the last, 10, 15 minutes for this to finish up in front of them, and they all gas on it. And that's when you get an accident. You've got 40, 50 pissed off people, and somebody will do something, somebody will get a little too aggressive, and that's when you've got problems. I think, and it's just my personal opinion, I've seen more problems with governed trucks in zones, because I've run the US, I run the US as well, not right this moment, but I run the US as well. I see more problems with our trucks in Canada when we were governed at 65 miles or 62 miles an hour. You get into a 70 mile an hour zone and you've got US guys blowing past you and they're giving you dirty looks and they're hitting the horn, and then they're like, if I go out to some of these places where it's 80, 85, I turn my CB off. Because man, I'm gonna get chirped. Badly, I'm gonna get chirped. And I believe that at that speed, if I'm doing 65 on an 85 mile an hour road or an 80 mile an hour, or even a 75 mile an hour road, at 65, I am a hindrance. I am impeding traffic. The flow of traffic is going to move at the speed limit. What's the solution? Well, first of all, don't govern the trucks. Okay, unless the FSMCA, the ATA, the Federal Motor Carrier, whatever safety association, unless they can come up with some hard data and some hard facts about what they've got, and I mean some serious realistic numbers that are believable, not something that some pencil pusher pulled out of his ass. And here's the other thing, probably a very high percentage, I'm not going to give you a number like 80 or 90, but a very high percentage of these people that are putting these rules in place don't drive trucks, have never driven a truck. What the hell are you people doing? Anyway, they're counting on what they call the science. So unless you can come up with some very hard data and some proof and some serious numbers that can actually prove that this will work, I suggest that they just don't do it. I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole in the States. It's going to cause more problems. And you are going to have a lot, remember, you're going to have a lot of pissed off drivers, a lot of pissed off truck drivers. It would not surprise me in the least if guys down there just hung up their keys. Okay, so now you've e-logged us. We've got EGR and DPF issues. We've got sensor issues. We've got 100,000 things. We're already trying to do business with one arm tied behind our back. Now you're going to govern our trucks? Forget it. It would not surprise me in the least if these guys just went, nope, fuck it, hang up the keys. I am done. I know that some guys up here did that. But we had an influx of immigration come in, and we had other drivers come in from out of the country that picked up the mantle, and I guess they didn't seem to mind driving at, 62 miles an hour. I myself, I hate it. The only time I do 62 miles an hour now is if A, I'm not a hindrance or in anybody's way, and I do it purely for fuel mileage. Purely for fuel mileage. 62 to 65, set the cruise control. But doing what I do, I run Eastern Ontario, Eastern Canada. So I'm running out of Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island. I don't need to be running 85 miles an hour or 75 miles an hour or even 70 miles an hour. Even though once you leave Quebec, the speed limit is 68. In Canada, there's only 2 provinces that enforce the government rule, that have the governing rule requiring their trucks to be governed, and that is Ontario and Quebec. Every other province, trucks can run at the posted speed limit, and I think that's the way it should be all across Canada. I also agree and think it should be that way for the US. I feel bad for those guys in the US with this coming up. Personally speaking, I think the one way to combat this is try enforcing the speed limits that are posted. Don't slow the trucks down, just enforce the speed limit. If the speed limit's 75 miles an hour and the truck's doing 75 miles an hour and the cars are doing 85, slow the cars down. Enforce the speed limit that's on that road. That might help. I'm not saying it's going to solve all the problems, but that would be somewhere where that's the first area that I would start. Get the U.S. state troopers in whatever states that are on these highways that are doing the job. If the speed limit's 75, let the truck do 75. If the truck's doing 75 on a 75 mile an hour road and the cars are doing 85, 90, nail the cars, slow them down. I'm not going to say that, trucks cause, all of the accidents that happen that are truck related are the truck's faults, because they're not. They're not. I can't tell you how many times in a week I myself have a close call with a 4-wheel vehicle because somebody's either doing, this with the phone, or they're reaching for this, or they're doing whatever, or they're arguing with their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. I can't tell you how many times. It's got to be at least, in the span of a 7-day period, probably, 7-8 times, somebody in a 4-wheel car doesn't realize how close to dying they can because they did something stupid. But if I get into an accident with them and thank God we got dash cameras, and that's reduced a lot of the responsibility on the drivers now as well. But if I get into an accident, that statistic is going to go up as a truck driving related accident. It's not going to go up as an automobile related accident with a truck. It's always going to be posted as a truck related accident with a 4-wheel vehicle, and that's unfortunate. So there, that's what I've got on that. That's just my opinion, sort of like my 2 cents. I don't see any good coming of this. Honest to God, I really don't. I feel bad for the U.S. guys. I run the U.S. I've been running it for as many years as I've been trucking. I can't see any good coming of this, so I do feel bad. I'd like to see it opened up back up here in Canada, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. Wind's picking up. I'm sure you can hear that. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that at you. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, give me a like, and turn on your notifications, and we will see you down the road.